mindset that a lot of officials in this administration have, under the guise of we are fighting corruption. So your shadow moves and you scream ghost, right? You've seen a ghost, you see a boogeyman everywhere. There's nothing to see here. There's no story. They simply made a hue and cry without simply sitting down to look at what was right in front of them. So they claimed initially that and this cast a lot of aspersion on his predecessor, Mr. Okechukwu Enelama, the former Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. It turns out that they even had an FEC, Federal Executive Council, approval to register that company, because the allegation was that money was moved to a private company. It wasn't a private company. Approved the registration. It was a special trade vehicle, right? It was an SPV that was set up to carry out specific activities. Everything was documented. No, before we looked at the documents, we went to press. Fraud. They set up a special investigative council. National Assembly people came in, conducted hearings to look at documents that they could have looked out without calling anybody. And they say, oh, okay. The setting up of the company has a Federal Executive Council approval. It also has the presidential endorsement. It is not a private company. It belongs to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but with the participation of private shareholders. And then he goes on to expectedly throw Mr. Enelama under the bus by saying the issue is that the process he adopted was not proper and it created confusion. Excuse me, you just told us he got FEC approval, he got assent from the president and all that. What other process did he adopt that created confusion in your mind?
Just one question. Did he register it with the, what do you call that registration?
With the CAC? Yes, so registered with the CAC.
So I don't understand what
they're talking about. And then he says, according to him, necessary steps to perfect the registration of NZECO to clear the ambiguity. Excuse me, just take your L. You guys goofed. Yes, and let's move on.
They goofed. He's trying to
work it back and still throw somebody under the bus.
So looking forward to the adjustments that he'll make to make it more transparent.
Exactly.
Since he faulted his predecessor's method. Thank you.
And Chuku on the WhatsApp says it's disgusting that we justify bad behavior. Must you play the devil's advocate? Shenifumi says, I beg, leave Ayo alone, Joe. I think the boy is on a tumba now. Okmayemi Pray says, why do we need a bill? They had a contract with the international oil companies, which is enforceable. We just like to rigmarole. Mimi says, the corruption is not only with the judges, but also with the bailiffs, the sheriffs, the registrars, other judicial officers, and everybody in the judiciary, including the Chief Justice of the Federation, is aware of such corrupt acts. That's what Mimi said.
That's what they said. The judiciary as a whole is what they said is corrupt, not just judges.
All
right, let's move on to our next story here. And going from the Senate saying that, or even if they sent angels from heaven, the judiciary will still be corrupt, to another statement now from the governor of Rivers State, who said it is impossible to stop kidnapping in the country because it has been commercialized. So two important figures in Nigeria's democracy coming out with statements so heavy. What do you have to say about this, Wade? He's saying that the reason why kidnapping cannot be totally eradicated. It can only be, the incidence is reduced because of the fact that it's been commercialized. What do you think about this?
It's a ridiculous statement by a governor, and he goes on to tell you that he has been commercialized. Who commercialized it? When crime would always be crime, what the security operatives doing, and each time he say this, and then he goes on to say that it's people between the ages of 16 and 22 that are mostly responsible for it. You have down to look at what brought about this kind of situations, that people between people between the ages of 16 and 22 are going into kidnapping and commercializing kidnapping. You've destroyed the educational system, no proper systems in place for people to get good jobs, and then you come back and then you blame these people and say, and then you say it's impossible.
But that's like to
stop.
That sounds like you knocking the person who's re-echoing the obvious and making excuses for crime, because I would understand his statement to commercialization, alluding to the fact that the bigwigs, it's almost like him shaking a table saying that the bigwigs, the people who are in positions of power, are using this as money making.
No, Val, because he targeted 16 to 25 year olds.
Hold on. Let's have Justin go on.
I'm arguing against what Val just said specifically. So you're mischaracterizing what you're saying is not wrong, but that's not what he is saying.
He's saying, yeah.
He is he's thrown a certain demographic right up here for being
the problem.
guilty. Right, he said people between the ages of 16 and this is something I'm very particular about. The young people of this country are victims. Doesn't justify bad behavior in any way, but then you cannot create a monster and turn around and chase it around with pitchforks. Right, kidnappers have guns. It's an armed crime. Right, let's trace the origins of the proliferation of small arms. Right, it's the political class that has armed these boys to use them during the election cycles. When that is done, there is nothing left for them. You've created this monster. Stop calling names. Let's create a social environment that is conducive for these people to not have to resort to crime.
Right,
Don't victimize them all over again.
Right.
Which is the exact point. You see, when you destroyed all the systems that work, all the social systems that work, and then you expect the society to be good. The same way the judiciary is talking about. The beliefs are corrupt. This is corrupt. This is bad.
But stories.
The society itself, the social mechanisms of the society, you've killed everything, and then you expect that the 16 to 22-year-old who you arm for your political issues will not come back and haunt you.
So the question now is it true that it cannot be totally
What does he do with his security vote?
Okay, so is it can kidnapping, can we see the end of kidnapping in Nigeria?
My take,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
It's a multi-dimensional solution, but the answer is categorically yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Messages. Fumi, Nengi sends this message. Behavior is bad behavior. No need to play devil's advocate. It's ridiculous. Silence by the chief security officer of his own state that's reacting to what Wike says. It says a shame. And
Deepak says with post social security system, crime will be encouraged, especially if money and incentives is involved.
Let's go to our next story. This one from Punch newspaper. Debt servicing gulps 1.09 billion naira in 9 months. That's a statement from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Examining the figures quoted for the first quarter, the other parts of the year really were just about to approach December. But your thoughts on this statistic, Wadi?
Wow, this is amazing. Even in the budget, we're looking at what they say about 25% for debt servicing. A budget of about $3 billion, about a third of it is being used to service debt, and most of this is really interest. Now, just looking at some of the things that they put together, they said that the CBN services only federal government debt, which brings to question how much in totality is the debt of this country.
The
state debt, who is servicing them, how much are they? So this 1.9 trillion is just federal government, and we know that so many states are over borrowed. That's one. Two, when you even look at the statistics of the payments, reduction of about 28% in the second quarter in terms of payment, and a 92% increase in quarter three. Just looking at the projections, we are looking at about the same amount that was paid in 2018 to be paid in 2019. But there's so many things that we need to look at here. Can we really afford to continue as an entity, because there's no money for anything, and then we're blaming everything on everybody because we cannot generate money? So at the end of the day, we're looking at profile of about, this is just federal government, which is already 1/3 of the federal government budget.
Why do you say there's no money? Those people that just spent 5.5 billion to buy vehicles for the time, let's sack half of them for starters.
Anyway,
and they contribute a significant amount of your budget expense, by the way.
But I guess what his allusion is, based on the fact that
there is money.
Debt to service ratio.
Debt to service.
I say there is money.
Anyway, so like I said, at the end of the day, when you look at it, we've not put in the states borrowings into this. And we're already looking at 30% of the federal government what's it called? And we know that when you combine all the states put together,
so my question is,
up to the amount of federal government budget.
So when you borrow, it shows up as capital projects.
Yeah.
Abi? Okay. Go and look at the budget. Capital, the capital expense, the project execution
is about
performance is 25. So all the money that was borrowed Where did it go?
So, which is why we've been asking an essential question all these years. I wouldn't say weeks or months, years, about transparency, about canteen government. Who asked this question? The siblings are the people in power. When we get back to our homes, do we ask these questions or we just wait for handouts?
I don't know about
It falls back on us,
And-
to be
and-
honest. Because the next time the next average man gets into power, the same cycle continues. So
and-
I think it's time for us to stop saying government this. These are people in power.
And just to add to what you said, Valentine, is we're focused today again on the federal government. And we can see clearly that state borrowings are not here. What questions are we asking all these?
Well, how clear is it seeing that the state still resorts to the federal for funding, for security votes, for different...
And some states, for instance,
And some
Lagos,
states have
not
gone
very
out to borrow.
transparent. Yes, with them.
Some people, some have issued bonds on the stock market. Some have taken what's it called? Like I said, there's one last thing: the external state debts. External state debts. That's debts that have been borrowed outside this country. If the CBN is not financing them, then there is a problem.
Usually do. So the CBN actually does pay them, but on behalf of the states. So the states typically would sign an ISPO,
Yes,
an
because
irrevocable
because the
standing
government
payment
guarantees
order.
all those
Yes,
ISPO being...
irrevocable standing payment order.
order.
Right, so it channels through the CBN, but the CBN is just performing a service to the states. So they actually have visibility on the numbers, but they wouldn't report it to you. They leave it to the states to do that.
Yeah, and the states are not reporting them.
Because you're not asking the questions.
My point exactly.
Bola sent in a message here.
It says that's highly responsible of the governor to say those perpetrators of kidnapping are between the ages of 16 and 22. This is tantamount to police profiling the youth. Our first problem is inadequate revenue and not debt.
All right, that was re-echoed by the finance minister a week ago. This day newspaper has this next story. Wadi, let's touch on how poor coordination hampers routine of Boko Haram. In this story, it said one major cause of prolonged war against insurgents in the northeast is poor coordination among the services in the armed forces, notably the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Air Force, Nigerian Navy, and other security agencies. They've been working hand in glove ever since, as much as we know, or rather as far as we know, in coordinating themselves to fight insurgency. A very clear case, which is most prevalent right now, is the border closure, the partial closure. We know that most security agencies are actually working in tandem to this. Your thoughts on this, Wadi?
Let me just start this by by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Abayemi Olunishakin, recently alluded to the challenges when he spoke at a conference in Abuja on the theme capacity development to combat emerging security challenges. He had decried the delay in achieving corporate targets of the armed forces, including training, that would lead to joint force integration. Today, the army wants to set up its air unit. They want to buy helicopters and planes and equipment to combat Boko Haram or to combat terrorism. You have the Air Force with all this equipment. What is happening? One part of the story says that the Air Force claims that it was because of bad weather. That's why they could not carry out some of the mission. But it just goes to show that the coordination is really not there. And a whole lot of this will fall back on this Chief of Defense Staff. And that's the question I ask. What exactly is he doing? Because as the Chief of Defense Staff, his responsibility is to coordinate all these things together and ensure that all the arms of the military work together. And he comes out and says that, regrettably, the emphasis on joint training in these institutions has translated to a level desired in the conduct of our joint operations.
But why would you think it will fall on him alone, seeing that all these different agencies and all the security outfits are working together on their own, they stand alone, they have their own budgets, they have their own war plans, they have their own allocation. So you can't say the allocation to the police as is captured in the fiscal budget for 2020 is the same as that of the Nigerian Army. And you know that based on your budget, for instance, the budget for your family won't be the same as the budget for Justin's family.
Okay,
so
you guys have to
so
work
let me
together. I've landed. So you guys have to work together to clear the refuse. Maybe assume that you live in the same estate.
Okay.
You have to match it according to what your budget is for the month.
Okay, so if there is a common area that all of us have to work together in, there's a special budget that is created and everybody sits down. And even if it's part of your budget, you all sit down and say, okay, it's 100 naira. is 100 naira. We need to clear the refuse in this area. We would add that to our budgets and it will come into that central.
So you're pegging it down to communication problem.
Yes, coordination and communication, and the responsibility of the chief of defense staff is to coordinate this. This is a war on terrorism. So you cannot say I will fight it independently, and that's where the point is. And for him to go out and say this, well, I leave it at that.
It's possible his hands are tied because
I leave it at
a
that.
lot of
Valentine.
questions in the air.
All right, so Shegun says, let us hope that from now on, the media will focus more on governors and local government chairman. Everything is not about the federal government. And then we have Dayot Swani from Maryland who says, Val, thank you very much for your point. All these people in government are our families and friends. We are the government. So when we point one finger, the remaining four goes back to us.
Thank you. Next story from Premium Times Premium Times publication really has this. Why cases of medical negligence persist in Nigerian hospitals. The Nigerian Medical Association mentioned this through Francis Fadule, who says, I quote, total systemic failure, end of quote, is responsible for cases of medical negligence in Nigerian hospitals. We've talked about brain drain. We've talked about how a lot of medical doctors. I spoke with a friend weeks ago who was on his way to the UK, going back to study there, and he was saying very clearly and passionately how a lot of Nigerian doctors find great jobs abroad. This is not new; is common knowledge. But how is this rhetoric going to change things, Justin?
Well, it's sad when you read things like this, because this is one of the areas in which we are feeling in very real terms effects of our anyhowness. I don't know of any doctor, young, middle-aged, who is not planning. I know quite a few who is not planning to leave. I think it was a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, we had a story where one of the ministers made a comment about we don't have a problem with doctors in the country, right? In spite of people living in droves. Now, the WHO recommended standard is 1 doctor to 600 people, right? Nigeria is at 1 doctor to 4,800 people, and it's getting worse because people are living in droves. So in this story, they're talking about cases of medical negligence. Dr. Fadwile is basically saying in summary that, listen, our people, the few people we have are overworked. When you're overworked, you tend to start making mistakes. That's essentially how he's explaining the issue of negligence. He's admitting that it does occur, and aside from the fact that people are overworked, overstretched, you also have the issue of inadequate facilities. He said here that Nigerians are still some of the best in the world. Honestly, it's almost heartbreaking. I can't really say, aside from us having to fix generally how we do things, because there's no specific issue here that you're owing them salaries, they don't have good working conditions. These same conditions exist in almost all areas of life in Nigeria. But fortunately, you could say fortunately for the doctors who have been trained, they can vote with their feet very easily because their skills are in high demand almost anywhere else in the world, where the conditions are better. Exactly. So we've set up a subsidy scheme for training medical personnel for the US, the UK,
for the world in general.
and most of the places. No, they have specific places where they go to, and now Canada.
Yeah, but I mean, talking about it on face value, it's not necessarily true, because if we talk about us giving them adequate training for them to be exported, it's not exactly true. There's a lot of there for training, because we have general medical practitioners who are just trained to administer similar services that health professionals, a normal general health professional, will offer, and they have to go abroad to get specialist training. So we don't necessarily lack the adequate knowledge they need to perform in international, on the international front. I mean, just stating the obvious. A lot of things lacking there.
I see your point. A lot of them would argue to the contrary.
Okay. All right, let's move on to this next one, Justin. But actually, we're out of time. Sorry. Freshly pressed 91 is on every day from 7:30. Special thanks to you, Justin Ije. At Justin Ije. Rink Nigeria is the Twitter handle for Wade Ahime. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, be safe.
Have a great day.
Beware of the
Thank you very
floods.
much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we talk entertainment inside of the Grapevine 91. This is Smooth 98.1.
The headlines.
Thank you.
We're really enjoying
Angel,
ourselves.
and even close comments like, oh, we can't say comments anymore. And then I hear, oh, they'll move on to our next story.
This legal statement is so sad.
No, it's so, I mean, off. I mean, off.
No, we're off. It's so